Have you ever felt like no matter how hard you try, something inside you still feels restless, like you've been chasing peace your whole life, but it keeps slipping away? Maybe it's not because you're lost. Maybe it's because God is trying to guide you somewhere deeper. Have you ever felt lost? Like you've been walking for so long, but the road just keeps twisting and turning, leading nowhere? You wake up some mornings wondering what all of this is really for. The stress, the striving, the constant need to control how life unfolds. Deep inside there's a quiet ache, a whisper asking, is there something more? Maybe that whisper isn't just your own. Maybe it's the gentle voice of God calling you, not to fight harder but to let go, to stop gripping so tightly to what you think life should be and instead open your hands to what it's meant to become. You see, surrender isn't about giving up. It's not weakness, and it's wisdom. It's that moment when you finally stop trying to steer the river and start flowing with it. When you stop demanding answers and begin to trust the one who already holds them. Every twist, every turn, every heartbreak you've walked through, none of it was wasted. The very things that made you stumble were shaping you. The tears that fell were watering the seeds of who you're becoming. God doesn't make mistakes in his design. Every part of you, your gifts, your flaws, your struggles, was molded with divine precision. Think of it like clay in the hands of a master potter. The pressure, the spinning, the reshaping, it's not punishment. It's preparation. The process that feels chaotic is actually creating something beautiful. When you surrender, you begin to see this truth unfold, that your life has always been guided by something greater than coincidence. Those moments of silence where you felt unseen, he was working. Those doors that closed in front of you, he was redirecting. The obstacles you thought broke you were actually molding you into strength. And maybe you've been taught that surrender means failure. But what if surrender is the beginning of freedom? What if the greatest act of strength isn't pushing harder, but trusting deeper? To trust that God's plan for you is far more intricate and beautiful than anything you could orchestrate on your own. I think about how often we fight against life, trying to fix, to control, to predict. We exhaust ourselves, believing peace will come once everything finally makes sense. But true peace doesn't come from understanding. It comes from surrender. It's like standing at the edge of an ocean trying to resist the tide. The waves come anyway. You can brace yourself and fight against them, or you can let them carry you. And when you do, you find out they were never meant to drown you, but to bring you closer to shore. So maybe today isn't about finding all the answers. Maybe it's about remembering that you were never walking alone. Maybe it's about loosening your grip and whispering, God, I trust you. Surrender doesn't mean you stop dreaming or stop caring. It means you stop forcing. You stop trying to make the world spin your way. You allow space for divine timing, for the right doors, the right people, the right moments to align. Because when you surrender, something shifts. The noise inside quiets. The confusion begins to clear. You start noticing signs. Little alignments, gentle confirmations that you're right where you need to be. It's as if life itself starts to breathe again. No longer heavy with control, but light with purpose. Surrender isn't the end of your power. It's the beginning of his power working through you. When you let go of your plan, you make room for his, and maybe that's the moment you find peace. Not in having it all figured out, but in realizing you don't have to. You were never meant to carry the weight of the world. You were meant to walk in faith, guided by something infinitely wiser, infinitely kinder. So if you feel lost right now, take a breath. You're not broken. You're becoming, and maybe this season of confusion isn't a sign that you're off track. Maybe it's the divine invitation to surrender, to trust that where you are is exactly where God needs you to be, as he shapes you into who you were always meant to become. Let go. Trust the process. And remember, surrender is not losing control. It's finally handing it back to the one who knows the way home. What if your life's purpose wasn't something you had to find, but something you were born with? hidden beneath all the noise, waiting for you to remember. Maybe your soul has been whispering its song all along. You just stopped listening. Have you ever wondered what your true purpose really is? Not the job you work, not the title on your name tag, not the roles you play, but the quiet song that lives underneath it all, that subtle melody your soul has been humming since the day you were born. Most people spend their lives chasing something they can't quite name. More money, more recognition, more security. But purpose, real purpose, isn't something you achieve. It's something you remember. It's already written inside you. God didn't send you here empty-handed. He placed within you a divine rhythm, a melody that only you can play. That's why your joy doesn't sound exactly like anyone else's. That's why certain things light you up while others don't. Those sparks, that quiet sense of peace when you do something that feels right, they're not coincidences. They're breadcrumbs, left by God to guide you back home to yourself. Think about it. Those moments when time seems to disappear, when your heart feels full, when you lose yourself in what you love, those are the hints of your divine calling. The world might call it passion or purpose, but in truth it's divine alignment. It's heaven's whisper saying, "This is the way, walk in it." But here's the hard part. To follow that path, you must surrender. And surrender is not just about letting go of control. It's about trusting the one who already knows where the path leads. You see, surrender is not a single moment of faith. It's a daily rhythm, a dance between your will and God's. Sometimes he leads, sometimes he lets you take a step forward, only to gently guide you back in sync. Like any dance, it's not about perfection, it's about connection. When you surrender, you begin to feel that divine choreography, the peace that surpasses understanding, the calm that doesn't make sense in the middle of chaos. You realize that even in the silence, even in the waiting, even in the unanswered prayers, he's still there, still moving, still guiding. And maybe that's what surrender really means, not giving up, but tuning in. Because the voice of God isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper beneath the noise of the world. Sometimes it speaks in the language of stillness, in the quiet breath between your thoughts. That's why solitude isn't loneliness. It's sacred space. It's where the noise fades and your spirit starts to hear again. The world teaches us to rush, to fill every silence with sound, to fill every gap with action. But God often speaks in the pauses. In stillness, you begin to recognize his presence in everything, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the rhythm of your heartbeat, the way the trees sway as if in prayer. Every breath becomes a reminder that you are being held. And once you begin to see life through that lens, gratitude follows. Gratitude is one of the most powerful forms of surrender. When you can thank God, not only for what's good, but also for what's confusing, you're saying, "I trust you, even when I don't understand." The ordinary becomes extraordinary. A morning cup of coffee, the laughter of a child, the sound of rain, they all become small sermons of grace. Gratitude turns your daily routine into worship, and as gratitude deepens, so does trust. Trust is what bridges the gap between what you can see and what you can't. You may not see the full picture, but you trust that the artist does. You trust that even the shadows have purpose, that even the pain has meaning. Think about how your body trusts itself without question. Your lungs breathe, your heart beats, your eyes blink, all without you needing to command it. That's how God works. Constant, unseen, perfectly timed. And when you begin to trust him like that, effortlessly, naturally, something inside shifts. The anxiety that once ruled your days begins to fade. You stop trying to control outcomes and start learning to participate in them. Then comes humility, the quiet recognition that you are not the author of your story, but a beloved character in a grander one. Humility doesn't make you small. It frees you from the illusion of being in charge of everything. It allows you to see that your purpose doesn't need to outshine anyone else's to matter. In God's masterpiece, every brushstroke has meaning. The vibrant colors and the shadows, they both have a role. You are one of those strokes, essential, intentional, irreplaceable. So if you're still searching for your purpose, maybe it's not hidden out there somewhere. Maybe it's been inside you all along, waiting for you to slow down enough to hear it. Ask yourself, what brings peace, not just pleasure? What makes your heart feel full, not just busy? Those are your clues. Follow them like breadcrumbs left on your path. And as you do, remember, purpose is not a destination. It's a relationship. It's walking hand in hand with God, trusting His rhythm even when you can't see the next step. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to stay willing, open, and aware. Because the divine plan isn't about doing more, it's about being more present. So today, take a breath, find a quiet space, listen, not with your ears, but with your spirit. Gratitude, trust, humility, silence, they're not just spiritual practices. They're ways of remembering who you are and who walks beside you. You are not lost, you are being led, you are not behind. You are right on time, and your purpose, that sacred, one-of-a-kind melody God composed within you, is already playing. All you have to do is listen, and when you finally hear it, truly hear it, you'll realize that surrender isn't about losing yourself. It's about finding the part of you that's been divine all along. Why is it so hard to let go? We say we trust God, but deep down we still want to steer the wheel. Maybe the thing we're most afraid to release is the one thing keeping us from peace. Have you ever noticed how hard it is to let go? We talk about surrender, trusting God, flowing with life, and it sounds so beautiful, so peaceful, until life actually asks us to do it. That's when fear shows up. That's when the voice inside says, what if I lose everything? What if I fail? What if I'm wrong? Fear of the unknown. It's one of the oldest instincts we have. We crave certainty. We cling to it like a life raft in a stormy sea. But here's the truth. There is no growth in certainty. Every meaningful transformation begins in the dark, where you can't see the next step, but you take it anyway. Maybe you've been in that place, standing at the edge of something new, terrified because you don't know what's next. You want to trust, but your mind keeps building stories. What if I fall? What if this isn't God's plan? And yet, what if that fear is not a warning but an invitation? What if stepping into the unknown is the only way you'll ever see what faith really looks like? Faith doesn't eliminate fear, it teaches you to walk through it. Courage isn't the absence of uncertainty. It's the decision to keep moving even when uncertainty screams the loudest. But fear isn't the only thing that stands in our way. There's something more subtle and more dangerous called control. Control makes us feel safe. It tells us that if we plan enough, prepare enough, and worry enough, we can make life behave. But life doesn't work like that. Control is an illusion dressed as responsibility. It makes you believe you can manage everything, outcomes, timing, people, even God's plan. But have you ever noticed how exhausting that is? The constant need to fix, predict, and prevent. The anxiety that rises every time things don't go as planned. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is to stop trying so hard, to loosen your grip, to breathe, to let God be God. When you finally stop fighting the current, you realize it was never trying to drown you. It was carrying you somewhere deeper. And then there's another wall, one built from your past. Old beliefs, old narratives, old voices that still echo inside you. You're not enough. Don't take risks. People like you don't change. These are the chains of limited belief, and we wear them so long, they start to feel like skin. But your past doesn't define you. It prepares you. Those mistakes, those rejections, those heartbreaks, they weren't meant to imprison you. They were meant to refine you. Like heat purifies gold, Your experiences have been shaping you for something greater. Maybe it's time to question those voices. Who told you that you had to be perfect before you could begin? Who convinced you that you can't start again? God's grace has no expiration date. Your potential doesn't vanish because of yesterday's failures. Then there's the trickiest barrier of all, the ego. It's sneaky. It doesn't come shouting with pride. It whispers in reason. It says, be careful, be realistic, don't get your hopes up. It calls itself wisdom, but often it's fear wearing a clever disguise. The ego thrives on control and certainty. It builds walls and calls them boundaries. It avoids pain and calls it wisdom. It prefers the safety of what's known over the miracle of what's possible. But when you live by the ego, you shrink. You play small. You confuse safety with peace. Real peace doesn't come from hiding from the storm. It comes from standing in it, knowing who holds you steady. So how do you overcome these barriers? How do you surrender when your mind is screaming to hold on? First, do you recognize the fear. Name it, bring it into the light. Because fear loses its power when it's seen. It feeds on silence and secrecy. But the moment you say, God, I'm afraid, but I trust you anyway, something shifts. You take your power back. Second, release control. Stop wrestling with outcomes you can't change. You don't need to have the map when you walk with the one who made the road. Let love, not logic, lead you. Let grace fill the spaces where certainty used to live. Third, remember who you are. You were not created to live small, anxious, or confined by the limits of your past. You were designed in the image of the divine, shaped with purpose, crowned with worth. The same God who breathed galaxies into being also breathed life into you. That's not coincidence. That's calling. And if God trusted you enough to give you life, can't you trust Him enough to guide it? Sometimes I think of life like standing in front of a canvas that's far too big to see all at once. We stare at one small corner, a brushstroke of pain, a streak of confusion, and we say, this makes no sense. But if you could step back, if you could see it from God's view, you'd realize every line, every color, every mistake contributes to the masterpiece. The art doesn't make sense up close, but that doesn't mean it isn't beautiful. That's what surrender really is. Stepping back from the canvas and saying, God, I trust the picture you're painting. So maybe today, the challenge isn't to figure everything out. Maybe it's simply to let go of the fear, the control, the old stories, the ego's lies. To stop asking, what if it goes wrong? And start asking, what if it goes right? To stop assuming the unknown is dangerous and start believing it's divine, because on the other side of surrender, there's peace. A peace that doesn't depend on understanding. A peace that comes from finally realizing you were never meant to carry the weight of the world alone. So breathe, loosen your grip. Let God take the lead. The unknown isn't empty. It's full of His plans. Control isn't safety, but it's a cage. And surrender isn't weakness. It's the key that sets your soul free. Look up at the stars for a moment. Every one of them burns in perfect order. Billions of lights, no chaos, no mistake. What if your life is part of that same divine harmony? A note in God's eternal song? Have you ever stood in front of the night sky and felt small? That quiet moment when you look up at the stars and realize how vast everything is. Galaxies upon galaxies spinning in perfect harmony, and yet somehow you're a part of it. You're not watching from the outside. You're in it. You belong to it. That's what it's like to be part of God's grand design. A divine symphony where every soul, every story, every heartbeat adds its own unique note. And whether you realize it or not, your life is a melody written by the Creator Himself. You see, none of us exist in isolation. Your purpose isn't just yours. It's a thread in a much larger tapestry, one that stretches far beyond your lifetime. Every act of kindness, every prayer whispered in the dark, every time you choose love instead of fear, it ripples outward, touching lives you may never even meet. It's easy to think your choices don't matter, that your days blend together, ordinary and unseen. But in God's eyes, nothing is wasted. Every moment, every encounter, is a brushstroke in the masterpiece he's painting across eternity. Think about it like an orchestra. No single instrument can carry the entire symphony. The violins may lead the melody, but the cellos hold the depth. The horns bring the power, the flutes bring the lightness, and even the quiet pauses, those moments of silence, have meaning. Together they form something so much greater than any one part. That's what your life is. One instrument in the grand music of creation. And when you surrender, truly surrender, you begin to play in tune with that greater song. Because surrender doesn't just align you with God's plan, it amplifies His light through you. You become a reflection of His peace, His love, His grace. You start to see life differently, not as a series of random events, but as a divine conversation between you and the Creator. Every time you forgive when it's hard, you become a note of mercy in this world. Every time you choose patience, you become a rhythm of grace. Every time you love without expecting anything back, you add beauty to the divine composition that's unfolding through all of us. And slowly, without even realizing it, you become a vessel, not of control or ambition, but of purpose. A mirror that reflects heaven's light into the darkest corners of the earth. When you live in surrender, your actions stop being just yours. They become a channel through which God's love moves. You begin to notice how your words heal people, how your presence calms rooms, how your kindness restores hope. That's what it means to live aligned with the divine plan and to stop asking, what can I get from this life? And start asking, what can flow through me? And in that space, something sacred happens. You realize you've been crowned, not with gold or jewels, but with divine purpose. Your crown isn't about superiority or status. It's a symbol of identity. It means you are chosen, equipped and trusted to carry light into a world that desperately needs it. Imagine that crown for a moment, not as a weight to bear, but as a reminder of who you are. When doubt whispers that you're not enough, your crown reminds you that you are handcrafted by the same God who set the stars in motion. When the world tells you to give up, your crown reminds you that divine strength flows through you. It's not arrogance, it's awareness. Awareness that you're part of something far greater than your fears. But here's the beautiful paradox. The more you surrender, the stronger you become. Because surrender isn't weakness, it's connection. It's leaning into God's strength instead of relying on your own. The world teaches that power means control, dominance, having the last word. But in the kingdom of God, power looks like humility. It looks like compassion. It looks like trusting even when the outcome is uncertain. The more you surrender, the more grounded you become. The storms may come, but they no longer shake you the way they used to. Because you've found your anchor, not in outcomes, but in the one who holds them all. Think of a tree during a storm. The wind roars, the rain lashes down, but the roots go deeper. That's what surrender does. It doesn't remove the storm. It roots you deeper in God's presence, and from that rootedness you begin to live differently. You stop striving to prove your worth and start living from it. You stop chasing meaning and start embodying it. Your days become sacred, not because they're perfect, but because you walk through them with awareness of the divine pulse beating through everything. That's what it means to be part of the great symphony. You don't need to be the loudest note or the leading melody. You just need to play your part faithfully, beautifully, fully, knowing that the conductor never misses a beat. Even when your life feels quiet, unseen, or uncertain, the music is still playing. God is still conducting, and your note still matters. So maybe today the question isn't, what's my purpose? Maybe it's, how can I align with the greater song? How can I let my words, my work, my love harmonize with what God is doing in the world? Because when you do, when you live in that space of constant surrender, you become part of something eternal, something that heals, uplifts, and transforms. And maybe one day when you look back, you'll realize that your life was never a solo performance. It was always part of a divine orchestra, a breathtaking, endless song of grace. So keep surrendering, keep trusting, keep playing your note, because in God's symphony, Even the quietest melody can change the world. Maybe peace was never something to chase, but something you allow. Maybe God's been waiting, not for you to fight harder, but to finally let go. Because sometimes, the most powerful prayer is simply, I trust you. There's something sacred about the moment when you stop fighting life and start flowing with it. That moment when you finally exhale and whisper, God, I trust you. That's what true surrender feels like. It's not a single event. It's a lifestyle, a quiet, steady rhythm that turns chaos into peace and fear into faith. You see, surrender isn't something that happens once in a prayer or a crisis. It's not a mountaintop moment that fades when life gets messy again. It's a way of being and a posture of the heart. It's waking up each morning and saying, even if I don't know what today brings, I know who's walking with me. When you live in surrender, your life begins to change, not from the outside first, but from within. You start to see the world differently. You stop measuring success by control and start measuring it by peace. You stop chasing validation and start resting in alignment. Because here's the truth, a surrendered life is a harmonious life. It moves to the rhythm of divine timing, the same rhythm that makes oceans dance and stars stay in orbit. You realize you don't have to force everything anymore. You don't have to make things happen. You simply allow them to unfold. Imagine your life as a song. When you live without surrender, you're trying to play every instrument, every note all by yourself, and it's exhausting. But when you surrender, you finally let God conduct, and suddenly everything sounds different. The melody is smoother, the pauses have meaning, and even the dissonance becomes part of something beautiful. That's what happens when you let go of fear and control. Your life becomes music, again, peaceful, purposeful, whole, and maybe that's what God has been inviting you into all along. Not a life of perfection, but of partnership. A life where you no longer carry everything alone, where you don't need to see the whole path to trust the next step. He never promised us an easy road, but he did promise something far better, his presence. He said, I will never leave you. I will finish the work I began in you. That means your story isn't over. The detours weren't wasted. The waiting wasn't meaningless. Every chapter is still leading you somewhere sacred. Maybe you've spent years trying to make life make sense, trying to control outcomes, fix timelines, hold everything together. But what if peace doesn't come from holding tighter? What if it comes from finally letting go? What if the breakthrough you've been praying for has been waiting on your surrender? Let's be honest, surrender takes courage. It means trusting when you don't have all the answers. It means forgiving when you'd rather stay angry. It means believing that even the pain has purpose. But surrender also brings a quiet kind of power, the kind that fear can't touch. It's the power of faith, of trust, of resting in something greater than yourself. When you start living surrendered, you stop reacting and start responding. You stop panicking over the storm and start noticing who calms it. You begin to see God's fingerprints in the smallest details. The right word at the right time, the unexpected kindness, the doors that close just to lead you to better ones. And in those moments, you realize surrender was never about losing control. It was about remembering who was in control all along. So maybe today God is calling you to loosen your grip, to stop fighting what you can't fix, to stop trying to carry what was never yours to hold, to let go of the fear that tells you you're not enough, to release the need to be perfect, to know, to plan, to open your hands and say, here I am, Lord, lead me. Because every time you surrender, heaven moves. Every time you trust, something shifts. Every time you let go, something beautiful begins to unfold. And maybe that's what living in surrender really is, a sacred exchange. You give God your worry and he gives you peace. You give him your control and he gives you direction. You give him your fear and he fills you with courage. So as this message comes to a close, take a deep breath, feel it. The quiet presence of something divine surrounding you right now. This isn't coincidence. You're hearing this because it's time. Time to stop striving and start trusting. Time to stop forcing and start flowing. Time to live surrendered. Because a surrendered life isn't small, it's expansive. It's full of freedom, peace, love, and divine purpose. And when you live that way, you don't just change your own life, you change the world around you. So today, choose surrender. Let go of fear. Walk by faith. And if this message touched your heart, share it. Because someone out there, someone who's tired, afraid, and holding on too tightly, needs to hear that peace is still possible. That surrender isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of the most beautiful chapter yet.